Ladies and gentlemen, I looked fear dead in the eyes, and it didn't blink. I was face to face with the thing I've avoided my entire life, and there was no way out, no escape, just me, and the truth I'd been running from. In that moment, I realized something most people never do. Fear isn't here to stop you. It's here to show you where you begin. If you've ever felt frozen, trapped, or too scared to move, this is the message you've been waiting for. Fear has a strange way of dressing itself up as logic. It whispers convincing arguments in our heads, telling us why we shouldn't try, why we shouldn't speak up, why we're not ready. We think it's being protective, a voice of reason, a safeguard from harm. But really, it's a cage made of our own thoughts. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it just quietly convinces us that it's better to stay where we are. Better not to take the risk, better to avoid rejection, avoid embarrassment, avoid failure. And that subtle whisper becomes the very thing that keeps us from living, from growing, from becoming. It's easy to believe that fear is a sign to retreat, that the discomfort we feel in our chest, the tightness in our throat, the racing pulse, these are warnings to stop. But what if they aren't? What if those feelings are the indicators that you're on the edge of something real? We've been trained to view discomfort as danger, when in truth, it's often the beginning of breakthrough. The path to anything worth having is always paved with moments that feel unfamiliar, uncertain, even terrifying. You can't access your courage until fear shows up. You can't build resilience if you never feel tested. The presence of fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're alive. I've stood face to face with fear more times than I can count, and not in the Hollywood dramatic way, but in those quiet, personal moments where your whole die tells you to shrink. When you're about to say something vulnerable, make a difficult choice, step away from the familiar. That is fear's favorite playground. It doesn't always come with flashing lights. Sometimes it just feels like indecision, like procrastination, like making excuses for why now's not the right time. But in every one of those moments, something deeper is at play. Fear isn't always loud, but it's always persuasive. The problem is we've internalized the idea that if something scares us, it must be wrong, that we're supposed to feel completely prepared, totally confident, fully sure before we act. But that's not how real life-changing growth works. You rarely feel ready before the moment you step forward. And confidence doesn't show up first. Action does. You earn confidence by walking through fear, not by waiting for it to disappear. And that's what makes fear a gateway. It's not blocking the way. It is the way. That tension in your chest isn't a red light. It's a green one you've never learned to trust. Imagine the life you'd be living right now if you'd never been afraid. Think of the decisions you would have made, the relationships you would have ended or started, the risks you would have taken. Fear didn't stop being present in those moments. It just convinced you that staying put was the safer option. But safe and stuck are often neighbors. The people who grow aren't the ones without fear. They're the ones who understand how to move with it. They see it as part of the process. They expect it, and they learn not to give it the final vote on what they do next. When I found myself face to face with something terrifying, I expected to crumble. I thought the fear would paralyze me, and for a second it did. But it also gave me clarity I hadn't had before. There's something about being in a moment you can't escape that strips away the illusion of control. And in that raw place, you realize the only way forward is through. There's no detour, no shortcut, no clever trick to bypass the work. Fear is a teacher with terrible bedside manner. It's rough, it's uncomfortable, it never arrives gently, but if you stay with it long enough, it always shows you something valuable. Sometimes it reveals where you've been shrinking, other times it shows you what you truly care about. Because fear often guards the things that matter most. That's why it feels so intense. Because deep down, you know that decision could shape your identity, and you also know that staying small is no longer sustainable. Fear isn't always the enemy, sometimes it's the compass. We think the goal is to become fearless, but that's a myth. No one is fearless. The most powerful people still feel it. They've just developed a different relationship with it. They don't wait for fear to go away before they act. They see it, name it, and move anyway. That's real courage. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it be the boss. You're not supposed to kill fear. You're supposed to outgrow its power over you. And the only way to do that is to walk into the discomfort again and again until it becomes familiar. Every time you choose action in the presence of fear, you rewrite the story. You start to build a new identity, one based on evidence, not imagination. The more you show yourself you can handle discomfort, the less power fear holds. You begin to realize that what you were afraid of wasn't the situation itself. It was the feeling you thought you couldn't handle. But you can. You've already survived harder things than this. And every time you step forward, despite the voice telling you not to, you take back a little more of your power. So the next time fear shows up, and it will, don't treat it like a stop sign. Treat it like a signal that you're on the edge of something important, that what you're about to do has meaning. And instead of shrinking back, ask yourself, what would I do if fear wasn't making the decision right now? That's where your growth lives. Not in avoiding fear, but in dancing with it, learning from it, and proving to yourself that fear isn't the wall, it's the doorway. You just have to be willing to walk through. Fear doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how successful you've been, how smart, how prepared. It shows up for everyone. The moment you step outside your comfort zone, whether in love, career, or self-expression, it reappears. And the irony, the more growth you experience, the bigger your fears can become. Because now the stakes feel higher. You've got something to lose. You've seen what you're capable of, but you've also become aware of how far you could fall. Fear doesn't just attack beginners, it waits for people with momentum, because that's when slowing down becomes tempting. But fear only has as much power as you're willing to give it. Most of the time, it wins not by force, but by negotiation. It makes you second guess your instincts. It makes you ask the wrong questions. What if I fail? What if they don't like me? What if I'm not good enough? These questions sound smart, even responsible, but they're paralyzing. They pull you out of the present moment and drag you into an imaginary world where you're already defeated. Fear doesn't need to stop you in real life. It just needs to convince you to hesitate long enough that you never start. There's something deeply liberating about realizing fear isn't going away. Once you stop trying to eliminate it, you can focus on coexisting with it. Like background noise, it's always there, but it doesn't need to drown you out. You can still speak, still act, still move forward. The goal isn't silence, it's sovereignty. It's standing in the storm and realizing that even with fear screaming in your ear, you still get to choose your next step. You are still in control of what you do with your hands, your voice, your time. That's real power. That's what growth feels like. Fear likes to disguise itself as rationality. It wears the mask of being realistic. But let's be honest. Fear isn't being realistic, it's being reductive. It takes your potential and shrinks it to the size of your current comfort zone. It looks at your past mistakes and says, that's all you'll ever be. But you are not your past. You are your patterns, and you have the power to change those. The moment you recognize that fear's logic is flawed, its grip weakens. Fear doesn't care about the truth. It only cares about control. It wins when you stop questioning its script. Think about the moments in life when you felt most alive. They weren't the ones where everything was certain, where everything went smoothly. They were the moments when you did something that scared you, when you risked something, when your voice shook but you spoke anyway, when your heart pounded but you stepped forward anyway. That tension between fear and action is the birthplace of transformation. It's where you stop being a passive observer and become an active participant in your own life. That's what fear is trying to keep you from, your own evolution. It's important to know that fear's presence doesn't mean you're not ready. It often means the opposite. It means you've reached the edge of your current level and you're about to expand. Think of it like stretching a muscle. It only feels uncomfortable because you're using it in a new way. That tightness, that resistance, that pull, they're not signs to stop. They're signs that something is happening, that your body, your mind, your identity are shifting, growing, adapting. It's messy and sometimes painful, but it's always worth it. If you're never afraid, you're not stretching enough. The first few times you act through fear, it's going to feel unnatural. Your body might want to shut down. Your voice might shake. You might second guess yourself the entire time. That's normal. That's what growth feels like in the beginning, like clumsy, uncomfortable, and uncertain. But the more you do it, the more it becomes a part of who you are. You begin to recognize the pattern. Fear shows up, you move anyway, and afterward, you're stronger. Confidence isn't the absence of discomfort. It's the trust that you can handle discomfort without losing yourself in it. One of the most dangerous lies fear tells is that you're alone, that no one else feels what you feel, that other people are braver, more confident, less flawed. But everyone you admire has stood in the same place you're standing. They've heard the same doubts, felt the same panic, faced the same inner critic. The difference is they didn't stop there. They stepped forward in spite of it. You don't need to be fearless to begin. You just need to recognize that fear is a part of the journey, not a reason to delay it. Every time you listen to fear, you reinforce the belief that it's in charge. But every time you challenge it. And even in small ways, you chip away at its control. You speak up in that meeting. You say what you actually feel. You take the leap, send the message, ask the question. These moments seem small, but they add up. Each one tells your nervous system, we can survive this. And with each repetition, what once felt terrifying becomes tolerable. What felt impossible becomes familiar. And fear slowly becomes just another voice in the room, one you no longer obey. So when fear shows up, when it tightens your chest and floods your thoughts, don't see it as a stop sign. See it as confirmation. Confirmation that you're playing a bigger game, that you're standing at the doorway of change, that your next level is close enough to touch. And that fear knows it. Let that be your signal, not to turn back, not to wait for it to pass, but to take one step forward. Because beyond that fear is the version of you you've been waiting to meet. Not someone new, just someone buried under layers of doubt and ready to rise